The Ark of the Covenant, an all-powerful relic thought lost to history. But might this incredible artifact have been taken from the Holy Land to Ethiopia? Or even further afield, to southern Africa? Now a team of experts is on a quest across this enormous continent, investigating war-torn holy sites.
The Ark became a mystery simply because it is kept from observation by any person.
Questioning ancient cultures.
We have the Ark of the Covenant, and we carry it in front of us wherever we go.
And tracking down ancient artifacts.
In that cave is, I believe, the holiest sacred object known to the world.
After centuries of searching, Ark hunters have narrowed down this holy relic's hiding place to just a few locations. Using the latest data and following new leads, we can reveal the secrets of the lost Ark. The Ark of the Covenant, a holy item said to be imbued with incredible power to smite God's enemies. This artifact disappears from history around the 6th century BC with the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem. There are many theories that tie the Ark to the African continent, which deserve to be explored. The most famous of these links the Ark to Ethiopia. The Horn of Africa is one of the most volatile regions of the world, and this story is ever evolving. So could this often told tale be true? It begins with the pages of the Ethiopian history book, the Kebra Nagast.
The Kebra Nagast is actually the history of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. It's recorded beautifully in beautiful pictures. It says that whoop whoop, you know, that's the traditional bird of Israel, actually told the Queen of Sheba that there's a very, very nice man up in the north that she should really try to visit.
The Queen of Sheba went to visit King Solomon of Judea, taking with her exotic spices, gold, and precious stones. This story from an obscure Ethiopian text may sound fanciful, but it is corroborated in many sources, including the Book of Kings in the Old Testament.
The Bible records Queen Sheba visiting King Solomon here in Jerusalem. According to the Ethiopian revered book called Kebra Nagast, they were also intimate. The result, 9 months later, was a child named Menelik, who eventually will become a king back in Ethiopia. And growing up, Solomon destined him to spread Judaism back in Africa. So he geared a team of people that will introduce the religion and created replicas of the temple and its items.
Among the items that Menelik was charged with taking back to Ethiopia was a replica of the Ark of the Covenant.
But Menelik at some point fooled his father. He tricked him. He took the fake ark, that replica, and placed it instead of the real one, and took the real one with him to Africa. By Ethiopian tradition, they have it. It was carried by Menelik back to Ethiopia. He used it in the battles, and he always won.
The story goes that the Ark helped Menelik become the undisputed ruler of Ethiopia. But he soon realized that the Ark was too dangerous and took drastic action.
Realizing its special powers, he eventually stored it on an isolated island in a lake in Ethiopia where it was kept for centuries.
This is the remote island of Tana Kirkos. This speck of land is home to around 30 monks, and life here has barely changed for hundreds of years. The keepers at Tanakirkos claim to have a number of ancient holy artifacts. However, they now say they no longer have the Ark of the Covenant. It is said that with the arrival of Christianity in the region, it was moved from this island to the city of Aksum, the holiest place in Ethiopia, and the coronation site for many of Menelik's successors. It was put in a shrine next to Our Lady Mary of Zion Church, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims that this is where the Ark remains to this day.
You cannot enter that church, and one priest is alive at a time, and he alone can go into that church, and he is the custodian of the Ark.
I believe whatever is brought here, not only the Ark of the Covenant, everything, it's kept sacred. You know? What makes the Ethiopian church unique is that everything is always kept a secret from the followers, the Christians, even from the priests too. So it might be here.
So is the Ark in Ethiopia? Well, Ethiopians are certain they have it, but they won't let anyone see it. That's the problem. That's the agonizing part of that fascinating story. So validating that Ethiopian famous tradition just cannot be done.
The task of substantiating these claims is now even harder after the outbreak of the war in this region, known as the Tigray Crisis. In late 2020, the fighting reached Aksum, and many locals ran to protect the Ark. What happened is still not clear. Some reports say soldiers left the Ark alone. Others say it was taken to the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Either way, no one has said they have seen inside this building since a much older conflict, World War II.
In 1992, a report came out that Edward Ullendorf had actually visited the church in Aksum, and he was granted permission through the military. And during the Second World War, he'd actually seen the Ark. However, he wasn't that impressed with it, and he believed it was just a kind of modern fake that many churches in Ethiopia have copies of.
In Ethiopia, the practice of churches holding replicas of the Ark is widespread.
Any Ethiopian church anywhere in the world, and you'll see a replica of the Ark. There'll be a facsimile of the Holy of Holies at the front of the church. It's only the patriarch or the high priest, if you will, who can enter there, only during certain days, very reminiscent of the Jewish origins of this whole story.
This tradition is seen at the Ethiopian Orthodox Timkat Festival, which is the same day as Epiphany in Western Christianity. On this day, thousands of replicas of the Ark of the Covenant are paraded around Ethiopia. Could it be that the Ark in St. Mary Zion is just another replica? Until the keepers of this Ark decide to reveal their secrets, or the truth behind what happened during Ethiopia's civil war comes out, a question mark remains over its authenticity. But there is another location on the African continent that also claims to have the Ark, and this time it is on display for all to see. 2,500 miles away, in an area that straddles the border between Zimbabwe and South Africa, there lives an ethnic group known as the Venda people. These people maintain the tradition of the Ngoma Lungundu, a magical drum reputed to possess fearsome power. And some believe that one of these legendary instruments could be the Ark of the Covenant. But surely the description of the Ark in the Bible is of a chest and not a drum. However, the ark is described in different ways in various books of the Bible. Professor Magda LaRue is an expert on the Ngoma Lungundu and has investigated the connections between the drum and the biblical ark.
Exodus 25 tells us the story of how God explained how it should be built with gold and all the nice things. In Deuteronomy 10, it says that the Lord told Moses just to make a simplified ark. Maybe it was a drum. Why not?
Originally, it seems the earliest reference in the Bible refers to Miriam as having the ark in the battle that she was fighting, and she beat it, and it was a drum.
Limba oral tradition says they wielded the Ngoma drum's power in the same way as the ark was used in the Bible.
They used it in warfare. It had power. It had an effect on the people. They said it put them to sleep, and that's ideal in warfare. So there are many stories surrounding that. Drums are the symbol of the presence of the God and the king and power.
Another striking similarity between the ark and the Vindas in Ngoma Lungundu is that it had to be carried by a special collection of people. In the ark's case, it was the priestly class known as the Levites, who were said to descend from the brother of Moses, Aaron. For the Ngoma Lungundu, the Vinda chose the Limba people.
So the Ngoma Lungundu is a Venda object, but the Limba carried the drum for the Venda people. The Limba of Southern Africa has a fascinating story of origin, or tradition of origin. They said we came from the north by boat to Africa as traders, but we couldn't go back. So the Limba were very crafty, skilled people in magic and in warfare specifically. So they walked in front of the Venda people and they blazed the way into Africa southwards.
It is said that the migrating Limba people walked the length of Africa. In their long journey south, some believe they contributed to building impressive structures, such as Great Zimbabwe. But this journey also created conflict and warfare. And the Limba say that the Ngoma was used throughout history to smite their enemies, just as the ark is said to do in many places in the Bible. Nyawaleni Mufadza of the Limba Cultural Association explains how his ancestors treated the ancient artifact in the same way the Levite priest treated the ark.
To us, the Ark of Covenant and Ngoma Lungundu is the same thing. This ark, it was told that it was not allowed to be put down. It was always to be carried by 8 people, for each side. If they are tired, they hang it on the tree, because if it touches the floor, the ground, it is going to destroy everybody.
The Ark of the Covenant in the Bible was powerful, it was fearsome, it was carried also by a priestly family, and it was not supposed to be touched improperly or to touch the ground, and it had power. It had an effect on the enemy during warfare. So very similar to the Ngoma Lungundu.
There is no doubt that the stories told about the mysterious drum match up with some biblical accounts of the ark. But there is also another surprising link with the Holy Land. The Limba people trace their lineage back thousands of years to Israel. They believe their ancestors were Jews living in the Holy Land, and they brought the ark here to southern Africa with them. Professor Ruda Mativa is an expert on the history of the Limba people. She has come to the Vinda's abandoned stone-walled capital of Zata to tell her people's story.
We come from a village that was south of Jericho, which was actually called the Limba village. It does not appear in modern maps, but there are ancient maps that actually show the name Lemba.
The story goes that the Lemba people fled their home in the Holy Land with the Ark of the Covenant in 586 BC to escape the Babylonian sack of Jerusalem.
And we fled to Yemen. And we fled to an area called the Hadramut area, which is in the middle of nowhere in Yemen. But we actually built a city called Sana'a.
In 1995, an archaeological site in eastern Yemen was identified as being the ancient site of Sana'a, backing up the Lemba story. Located in the Hadramut Valley in the Arabian Desert, this place has always been isolated and war-torn. If the Lemba came here, it would have been anything but peaceful.
They had problems there with their Arab cousins who wanted them to convert to Islam. And normally when you live with another group, there are always fights. So time after time, they used to use boats and trek into Africa.
And we continue coming down south until we reach Zimbabwe. And we decide, okay, this is where we're going to make home. We settle in southern Zimbabwe. All this time, we have the Ark of the Covenant. And we carry it in front of us wherever we go. The rule is it's carried by males. They have to put on white tunics when they carry it, and they only beat on it when we are threatened.
When the Lemba and Venda peoples reach Zimbabwe, disaster strikes when their use of the Ngoma displeases their god.
We know that God is angry with us. And there's a cave in Mount Dumbwi where we hide the Ark of the Ngoma. And there's an elder that guards the Ngoma. In our oral history, that is the last piece that tells us that's when the Ngoma ended.
But some believe this legendary object has already been discovered. The drum that Lemba tradition says was left in the cave in Zimbabwe is said to be the very same one that now sits in a museum in the capital, Harare. Some believe this ancient item is the Ark of the Covenant. It is the remains of a drum, and it has a fearsome reputation. The translation of Ngoma Lungundu is the drum that thunders.
Ngoma Lungundu, in some literature, in traditions, it is referred to as the Ark of God.
But why does this tattered object not resemble the image of the Golden Ark as described in the Bible? The Lemba people's oral tradition has an answer.
The drum is very important to the Lemba community because it's an extraction from the Israelites' Ark of Covenant. From our oral tradition, it was repaired from the original Ark of the Covenant, which was destroyed.
Some Lemba say the original Ark was destroyed in battle, but they collected the wooden remnants and reformed them into a drum. They say this maintained the Ark's incredible power.
We made a replica because we were on the run, and we had seen what it looked like, and we knew the commandments that went with it.
What became of the golden cherubim is still a mystery. This object was said to have been carried south through Africa by the Limba people on behalf of their allies, the Vinda. But what is the provenance of this artifact? It was first discovered in a cave by a Swedish missionary called Harold von Sickart in the 1940s.
Von Sickart immediately recognized the parallels between the Ark of the Covenant and the Ngoma Lungundu. From their stories, from their traditions, and he recorded it. And he wrote this book, the Ngoma Lungundu and eine Afrikanische Bundeslage, Ngoma Lungundu and African Ark of the Covenant. And I think that's where the whole idea of Ngoma Lungundu being the Ark of the Covenant, came from.
This drum was lost in the archives of the museum for decades after its discovery, until it was found by British academic Tudor Parfitt in 2007, who identified it as the Ark of the Covenant. It's possible that there are other, older remnants of the Ark left by the Limba and Vinda people on their journey through Africa. But is there any truth to the Limba people's claim that they are Jewish and brought the Ark here from the Holy Land?
Being Jewish is not about being a race. There are black Jews, there are Indian Jews, there are white Jews. There is an ethnic component for some Jews who have been born of a Jewish mother, but who knows how many generations back.
It's easy to scoff at the claims of the Lemba people to be a long-lost tribe of Israel, but you have to remember that the Jewish world was much bigger than we think of it today, that what we now call Saudi Arabia, what we now call Yemen, which was Sheba, what we now call Ethiopia, these were Jewish lands going back 3,000 years. So the idea of Israelites being found way beyond the boundaries of modern-day Israel isn't as outlandish as you might think.
In the town of Sweetwaters, in the Limpopo district of the Republic of South Africa, the Limba elders are meeting. Pandalani Mutinda is the president of the Limba Cultural Association and an expert on the stories surrounding the Ngoma Lungundu.
So we are saying the Ark of the Covenant have played a major role connecting our belief and our origin from Israel. Shalom Bashar.
There are thought to be 80,000 Limba people spread across southern Africa, living alongside other cultures. Even though they are spread over such a large area, they are united by their shared religious practices.
It's written this way. Yes, Lemba, we see ourselves as Jewish because we practice same things which Jews do. We circumcise our people and we don't do intermarriage. If you are a member male, you must marry a female of Lemba.
As well as circumcision, the Limba practice other Jewish traditions. One of these is the use of the most sacred instrument in Judaism, the shofar horn.
This is the original Remso horn. But because we are in Africa, we don't have this type of a horn. We are using the Yemenite kudu horn.
The first mention of the shofar in the Bible is at Mount Sinai, where Moses would be handed down the 10 Commandments, which would later be placed in the ark. Jewish culture permeates every aspect of life for the Limba people, from what they eat to the way they are buried.
So all these graves, they all have to have so that they can be distinct from the other ones. The Lemba graves are facing up
north. And this north that we're talking about, we're not talking about north of Africa, but we're talking about Israel, where they come from, where we come from.
The Limbas claim to be an ancient Jewish culture living in this corner of Africa lends support to those who say the Ngoma drum might be the Ark of the Covenant. But the identification of this specific drum as a descendant of the Ark is a modern idea built on recent research and some wild assumptions. For many Limba, the fate of the original relic was lost in the mists of time.
When I tried to get the stories from the Limba, very few could really tell me anything about the Ark of the Covenant or the Ngoma Lungundu for that matter.
But the trail does not go cold with the Limba people. Hundreds of years ago, the Limba traveled through Africa with another group called the Venda people. And in their oral traditions, there are many stories of what may have happened to the holy artifact they identified as the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ngoma, as we read and we are told, there are now many explanations. Some scholars tell us that it's hidden somewhere in the mountains they now refer to as the Soutpansberg.
The question being, is the drum in the museum at Harare the Ark? Not at all.
Richard Wade is an explorer and archaeologist of 30 years standing and believes that there is something sacred in the Soutpansberg Mountains of South Africa. He discovered this when translating the works of another explorer, Peter van Heerden.
Peter van Heerden wrote a very interesting article in Afrikaans, and therefore it never became international. And he particularly liked the Venda culture, and there was a guardian keeper of the Ngoma Lungundu at Chandulu. And he met with Peter van Heerden, and he told him, "You must come with me, and you must come and see what we have."
Van Heerden says he was guided to a cave in the mountains where a Venda king called Dambenika had been entombed. Buried with him were the ancient artifacts associated with the Ark of the Covenant.
He couldn't believe what he'd actually found. And inside is the Ngoma Lungundu, and a beautiful photograph was taken by Peter van Heerden. I managed to get into the cave at Chandulu and actually find quite a lot of the objects that were left behind, and I saw the two perfectly made Ngoma Lungundus.
But Richard Wade says that he saw something more incredible than just ancient drums.
Next to the Ngoma Lungundu drums, the gold remains of the Ark are covered quite heavily with bat guano. I took a photo of the remains of the actual Ark of the Covenant, and there are two cherubims. They are roughly the size of my hands, and they are quite solid, pure sort of gold. It looks like they simply carried the remains of the Ark and they just placed them in a pile on the floor in the cave.
Unfortunately, Richard Wade does not have the proof anymore. He says that the photo he took of the Ark of the Covenant was on a laptop, which was stolen. Pandalani Mutinda and Naiwalani Mafadza from the Limba Cultural Association have decided to look into these stories of the Ark themselves. The cave is located in the Soutpansberg Mountains, which rise to almost 6,000 feet in the Limpopo region of South Africa and are home to the Venda people.
There is a saying long, long ago, the king of the Venda went into the cave with a dog, and then he fell inside. Different local communities or local storytellers, they believe that the Ngomalungundu also went there. Now we are going to the village where we'll be going throughout these mountainous areas to go and check the cave.
This area of South Africa is still relatively undeveloped, and there are few asphalt roads, let alone road signs to sacred burial sites. Mutenda and Mafadza are in unfamiliar territory and have difficulty finding the cave.
The machero.
Machero. Usatutsa muramboni apa une vakutaluchedza ona.
Vane vakatava yaone vaona zvezvi
chava kure.
Hai.
Hai.
But in the distance, they spot something. Could this cave contain relics associated with the Ark of the Covenant?
The cave that Dambanyika died in, there are very large rocks which fell in at the entrance.
Okay, that's the place.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I can see, yeah, there's the rock which has just fallen on top of the cave.
Yeah.
It is the correct one. We can have to go nearer to that place.
Yeah.
Further up the road, there's an issue. Because of the nature of feudal chieftainships in rural South Africa, Mutenda and Mafadza need to seek permission to visit the cave from the local chief. Before the negotiations begin, the chief invites the pair to examine a drum similar in design to the mythical Ngoma.
Oh, these are the handles for carrying it when they wanted to take it outside. You can see how big is it. It is held by 4 people. The drum of Ngomalungundu and this drum is not exactly different. But the difference is that one, it was not made from this country. It came out from not here, when the vendors came this site.
It's clear that the people of this village hold this drum in great reverence. But will they show their visitors the Ngomalungundu that is associated with the Ark of the Covenant in the cave? The chief's response sends a shudder down Mutenda's spine.
Our chief is indicating that the Ngoma Lungundu, it came in the olden days with the Venda people, and it was very terrible and fearful, so powerful, in such a way that it terrifies people along this region.
It seems the Ngoma still has the power to stop people dead in their tracks.
It is not allowed to go to the cave because there was an order.
He said we can go along the road and we can see where we can get a clear view of the mountain, but we can't go next to the cave. Ne?
It's disappointing that they will not be able to enter the cave. But despite all the stories of the Ark in this cave, Mutenda is skeptical about whether it was ever here at all.
Here we find that there's no history of the Ngomalungu to get into the cave. To those who are saying Ngomalungu ended here, that is not, it's a myth, it's not correct.
And Mafadza thinks that this confusion has arisen from tribal rivalries.
The Ngomalungu, to me, never went there inside that cave. That is a myth, you see. That is what they believe, because everybody, they are trying to claim that Ngomalungu is theirs. That's why they try by all means to place it wherever they like.
But there is one man who says that he got permission to go to this cave. And he maintains that he saw the remains of the golden cherubim from the Ark of the Covenant in the darkness.
I personally believe, after all the research I've done over 30 years and a bit more, and I have seen things and I have been to the most sacred zones, and at Chandulu, I have seen with my own eyes the actual remains of what can only be the Ark of the Covenant.
What lies in this cave remains to be seen. But new scientific evidence might help prove that the Limba stories are true. If these legends can be proved to be true, then maybe they did bring the Ark to Africa.
In recent years, science may have come to the assistance of the Lemba people in their claim to be a long-lost tribe of Israel. There have been DNA tests which seem to indicate that there may indeed be a linkage between the Lemba people and the 12 tribes of Israel.
What I read was the DNA tests that were conducted by scholars. These are people who are said to be linked to the Cohens amongst the Jewish people.
Cohen is the Hebrew word for priest, and the Kohanim gene would link the Limba to the priestly caste in Judaism. Critically, it was the Kohanim who were the only people allowed to carry the Ark.
They still have the Y chromosome haplotype, which denotes in their DNA that they come all the way from Moses' brother Aaron. That's the actual chap who mainly gives the descent to almost all the Lemba in South Africa.
Magda LaRue was one of the field workers collecting these DNA samples.
When this DNA results came, I mean, it was amazing to see that the pattern of the Y chromosome was of the Lemba priesthood. The priestly family specifically had exactly the same pattern as those of the Jewish priesthood. And even in Jewish communities, just ordinary Jewish communities in Israel or wherever, you will only find it about 13%. They've got it 53%. So that is what the results was at that stage. So it was wonderful. It was kind of a cherry on the cake to my research. It was really colossal, you know, at that stage. It was groundbreaking.
The Lemba people can be said now to be Jewish. From the historical narrations, from the cultural links, and from the DNA tests that have been made.
But even if it can be said with a degree of certainty that the Lemba people did come from the Holy Land, the question remains. Is either the Ngomalungundu in Harare or the object in the Soutpansberg cave the real Ark of the Covenant?
In terms of it being the one in the Bible, That then becomes a bit of a challenge in that the descriptions of the biblical Ark of the Covenant do not fit the descriptions of a drum.
The question that is sometimes is asked, if the Lemba took the Ark of the Covenant, I doubt that. That they took a tradition of the Ark with them, or somehow actually used a similar kind of object is a possibility.
It's possible that the legend of the Ark being brought to Africa by Menelik could have influenced the Lemba people's oral traditions. And these stories could be one and the same. But it remains to be seen if the Ark of the Covenant ever came to this continent. It may be that it never left Israel. The most popular theory is that it is still buried under Jerusalem. Or could it have been taken to another place in the Holy Land? Documents also point to it being taken elsewhere in Europe. But even if the Ark has been lost forever, treasure hunters will continue to search for it, and stories of its power will continue to be told across the world. The Ark of the Covenant, a legend that will never die.